The game doesn't have to place you all the way on another planet to make you feel isolated. It can make you feel just as alone in our very own ocean, just as Soma does. If you're not one to get emotionally attached to a story and just want good horror, Soma is an amazing horror game, and it ticks almost all my boxes, that's the word I want. There's no K in, there's mixed letters, I messed up my wording, but yeah, it ticks all, I messed that up. It ticks all my boxes for what horror should be. And I think Soma is amazing. But it's so much more than that. Beyond making you feel isolated, the game constantly puts you in situations where you have to make a choice you don't want to make. Constantly makes you make a choice that makes you feel even more alone. And constantly reminds you that you are all alone. So what happens when the game suddenly gives you a friendly-faced companion? Soma is a game that I legitimately consider an experience. Something that, no matter how many times I revise this part of the script, no matter how many times I try to record this, I can't get the words quite right to give it justice for how it made me feel. Soma is an experience that is hard to put into words. I don't know how best to describe it as to give the respect this game deserves. I love this game. I think it is a masterpiece. I think it's art. I think it is an experience. But it is a game that completely broke me. The first time I finished playing it, I just kind of sat there in silence, contemplating life. It was a really weird moment. I can literally put myself back in that moment. Literally sat right there, right over there. I just remember sitting there with the tears running down my face. Not like crazy like tears, but just like sat there completely still. I'm going back to that moment. Just sat there feeling the tears just slightly overflow and just run down my cheeks. But I almost didn't finish the game. Not because I found it hard, not because it was too scary, not because I didn't know where to go, but because there's a moment in the game where I had to make a choice that I really didn't want to make. And I refused, but in order to progress, I had to do it. So much like the end of the game, at that moment in the game, I sat on my computer for a few minutes contemplating how badly I wanted to play the rest of the game versus how badly did I not want to do this. And before we go any further, spoilers. I've been talking a decent chunk about Soma, but I haven't really revealed anything massively spoilery yet. But this is a game that I think everyone should experience blind. But if you don't have the time to play the game, I recommend at least watching a Let's Play of it, because it is a story worth experiencing beyond simply being told. My personal recommendation would be Markiplier's playthrough of it. However, if not, this is your spoiler warning. Soma is a game set in 2015, where Simon, you, the player character, are getting a brain scan. However, when you come out of the scan, you find yourself in 2104 in a rundown facility called Paphos 2, which you soon discover is an underwater facility. A few hours into the game, you discover the truth of your situation. A meteor hit the Earth and wiped out all life on the surface. The only humans still alive are the ones scattered across Paphos 2. However, they have no human form anymore. Instead, they exist as a brain scan of the living human downloaded into a robot body, despite the fact that many of them still believe themselves to be flesh and blood humans, even seeing their mechanical bodies as human. This is what you are. You're a brain scan of Simon from 2015, downloaded into a robot body. You aren't Simon, you're just the memory of him in a body. Throughout the game, you encounter technically human beings. Humans who have been assimilated into the WoW, a supercomputer in Paphos 2 that got corrupted and now will do anything to ensure humanity's continued existence. Okay, it's a bit more complicated than that. If you've played the game, you understand what I mean, but do you want to know more? Go play the game. Anyway, my point is, none of them can help you. Of course, there's the voice of Catherine, a scan of a scientist from the year 2104 that accompanies you along your journey. But she's still just a disembodied voice on a headset. The only human you actually meet is close to the end of the game, where you find the last human alive, strapped to a life support system, asking you to kill her. Which, when I encountered this moment in the game, was... It's a game. It's lines of code. It's not real. It is a video game. They're voice actors. They're lines of code. They're not real. None of it matters. But because of the journey I'd been on while playing the game, because of what I've experienced, because of what I'd gone through the game and the story I'd been told, this was a hard moment, because I knew if I turned off her life support machine, I would be killing the human race. She is the only human you ever get to interact with in the entire game. Well, I mean, outside of 3 people back in 2015, but that's kind of a prologue. You can kind of count them, but yeah, it's subjective. Within the confines of the game, you never interact with another human apart from this woman at the game. But before the brain scan, back when you are actual Simon, you talk to your girlfriend and you talk to the 2 scientists who are doing the brain scan. So as of being on Pathos 2 though, you never actually talk to another human apart from this one woman. However, this wasn't the moment that broke me. Earlier on in the game, there's this moment where you meet a friendly little robot that guides you through the dark of the level. And I instantly fell in love with this little guy, because it was the first friendly face I've seen in the game that wasn't actively trying to kill me, or trapped, or couldn't help me. And then you go through an entire section of the game with him, where I gave him a name, I bonded with him, I created a connection with this machine made out of metal parts. I cared for him. But then, at the end of that section, you're forced to make a choice. In order for the game to progress, I was told I had to remove his power chip in order to power the door to the next level, which in effect is essentially killing him. And that moment really stuck with me. Like with any of these things in hindsight, it kind of sounds silly, it kind of sounds ridiculous, it kind of sounds stupid that, oh, it's just lines of code in the game, why did you care so much? But I loved him. This was the first friendly face I'd seen the entire game that was actually helping me. Catherine's just a disembodied voice on a handset. This robot was actually accompanying me, moving with me, so it broke my heart to do it. Looking back on the game now, I know in reality I could have just taken the chip from one of the other machines floating around. But at the time, I didn't realise this, so I really thought killing him was my only option. And I legitimately considered just stopping the game right there. I considered stopping altogether. I loved this game. This game was an amazing story. I was so invested in the story, but I was like, which do I do? Do I progress and see the rest of the story and kill my friend, or do I just stop here? Do I not make that choice? I didn't want to kill the only friendly character I actually got to interact with. But in reality, that's not actually true, is it? It wasn't a friendly robot. It was just a machine running orders, running a code, going from point A to point B. It probably wasn't even aware of me. Even if my character had died, the robot wouldn't have stopped. It wouldn't have felt bad, wouldn't have been sad. It most likely didn't even know I was there. All it knew was, when activated, run Command X. It's no different from your coffee machine making you your coffee in the morning. It's not making your coffee because it knows you want it, because you like it, or because it wants to make you happy. It does it because you pressed a button and it ran a set of commands. This is the exact same as the robot in Soma. And yet, I made a connection with this small machine that's just an ancestor of the coffee machine, because it was the first physical companion in the game that was benefiting me as the player. So I saw her as a friend. Also, I realised out of context that sounds bad. It's only my friend if it's benefiting me. Moving on, I felt bad for it. I felt sad for it. I felt a connection to it. Even though it was just another robot like all the other tools in the game. The reason I felt such a connection is because this robot is the first real companion I really remember interacting with in the game who aid you. Outside the voice of Catherine in a game where every other free-moving life form is trying to kill you. So of course I was going to form a bond with it. And do you know what the craziest thing is? I vividly remember K8 having emotes. I vividly remember it being friendly. I vividly remember K8 moving in a manner akin to a dog and its master. But no, I was wrong. K8 doesn't have any emotes, doesn't have a friendly face, doesn't have any lights on its screens to make it look like a smiling, happy emote. It's just a hunk of metal. It is just a small orb-like drone with no face. But because it was helping me, I perceived it as friendly. And because I perceived it as friendly, I remember it as having a friendly face. However, K8 was at least an animate object. But what happens when the friendly character is just a plank of wood that never moves? What happens when the game isolates you from any human interaction? What happens when the only face you see in the game is drawn on?